Start your engines.
Welcome to our time machine as we go back to 1969 tonight.
69 and 70.
And 70.
And
well, you got to
70.
get to 69 before you go to 70.
Yes, that's right.
So we're going to do 69 and 70 tonight.
I agree with you on that, but maybe later.
We are sort of like the New York Times. All the news that was fit to print, we're going to share with you tonight. If we don't cover it, it wasn't worth knowing. So here we go.
All right.
We're off on our journey.
Oh, gosh. Zach.
That was a technical issue. Operator error. But once again, we do want to appreciate you as our sponsors for being members of the Historical Society. Thank you very much. But also, obviously, the Dollar Foundation. This is a part of the Lake City Creative Alliance. The Continuum provides the facility. They're very generous with that. And you. Thanks so much. It's good to see you tonight. 1969.
And 70.
I want to know what happened in 70 that's got him so excited. All right. Once again, the big picture, if you will, the political situation in Lake City. We have Wilbur Brown as our mayor. We have Councilman Edward Bowen, R. Nettles, Paul Poston, Joe McElveen, Bobby Whitehead Sr., and Carlton Gaskins.
Okay. R. Nettles. Richard Nettles.
Richard Nettles.
Okay. And Robert T. Whitehead, pharmacy.
Bobby Whitehead?
Leon.
Yeah, he was the pharmacist.
The pharmacist, okay.
He's a pharmacist.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay. Here we go. Top songs of 1969. Boy, what an era. You gotta put a lot of this stuff in context because remember, Vietnam had been going on since the early 60s already. And we're at 69 and things are about to boil over. And one of the precursors of all change in our society is its music. And you'll see so much of that as we go through 1969 and 1970 in the music and in the movies. But we're still coming out of the era when everything was nice and rosy and nice like Sugar Sugar, number one. If you recall that music, and Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In. This was the tail end of the hippie movement, if you will. Then we have Can't Get Next to You and Honky Tonk Woman by the Rolling Stones, no less. The title says it came out of Nashville, but the Rolling Stones tell you it didn't. And then it was interesting looking at the clips of these songs like Dizzy, watching them dance. It was nothing but a dance video that they produced with the audio, and it was frantic movement. That's all it was, just movement.
Well, I thought it was a song.
What?
I thought it was a song.
It is, but I mean, all that's on the video clip, you don't even see Tommy Rowe, the singer. Okay. All you see is this woman dancing. So the whole 3.5 minutes. So you can see down through Crimson and Clover, which nice and calm music. Okay?
All right.
The movies. Midnight Cowboy. Easy Rider. Wild Bunch. I had to check the Wild Bunch. I didn't remember it. Turns out that is considered one of the greatest movies it was voted one of the greatest movies of the 1900s, which was surprising. When I looked at the clip, I recalled it. It's got a long list of actors that we all know, people like Warren Oates, Ernest Borgnine, William Holden, And it's just a crazy one. It goes back to the Mexican-American border in 1903, 1913, excuse me. A bunch of retired bandits bandits wanting to retire, so one last heist. And the next thing you know, they're involved in the middle of a war in Mexico. So really beyond. Of course, you got Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, which anyone that saw that remembers that movie. Then Once Upon a Time in the West was one of those great ones as well. So Westerns are really flourishing at this point. But then you get Alice's Restaurant. Alice's Restaurants take off, if you will, on Arlo Guthrie, if you remember him. He was a part of that whole hippie movement. His father was a very famous artist, you know, a musician. And Arlo Guthrie, Alice's Restaurant was just one of those songs that resonated with that generation. And they shoot horses, don't they? You may or may not remember this one. This is Jane Fonda. The other actors, I don't really recall, but Jane Fonda was in it, and it was about a dance marathon on the pier at Los Angeles in 1935. And these people danced for something like 1,500 hours. Can you even imagine how long that is? But the summary, the synopsis of it, didn't make it out to be all that happy a movie, not one you'd want to go back and look at if you need to be in a good mood, kind of a thing. And of course, True Grit, John Wayne, everyone remembers that one. Cactus Flower was a real comedy. It involved Goldie Hawn, and Goldie Hawn actually got an Academy Award for Supporting Best Actress as a result of this movie. The plot, too involuted for me to relate. It was just, but Putney Swope was on the other end, depressing from beginning to end. It was about the media in America in the 1980s and how dispassionate it was, how they would take videos of accidents and murders and not try to intervene, not try to help the victims or anything. And this guy gets caught up in the Democratic National Convention. Depressing. Then you've got things like Bob and Carol, Ted and Alice, that light rain people, the same. The Italian Job was one of those mystery, detective, really complicated theft of banks in Italy, kind of a thing. And of course, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, we've got another James Bond. And the Battle of Britain, more war stories. Lots of big movies at that time. Yep. Just a couple of things about the about the cars of that time, because there's some of them that are really interesting to me. Like the International Scout 800. I didn't know that International Harvester made cars, but they made that International Scout for 20 years, from about 1960 to 1980. It's considered the forerunner of today's SUVs. It had a detachable top, fold-down window on it. It was designed to compete with Jeeps. The designer said that the president of the company gave him his instructions, says, I want a vehicle to replace a horse. That's all he was told.
Yeah. Then you got the Oldsmobile Deuce and a Quarter.
Deuce and a Quarter, oh.
Yeah.
442,
Yeah.
which was a souped-up car. Let me tell you a little bit about Tommaso Mangusta, simply because that's an interesting story. You probably remember about Shelby, the Shelby Cobra that came out in the 70s. Well, Shelby and Tommaso worked together. They were working together to produce a race car and a car that they could sell in the U.S. And whatever reason, Shelby pulled out, went on to produce his Cobra. The name Mangusta is Italian for mongoose. It's an animal that kills cobras. So it was a little arrogant on his part, but nevertheless, it was interesting. They only made about 40 of these things. Now, we have a whole list of things. We had to really winnow it down, if you will, because this is really an exciting time in terms of actual events that took place in our society. You can see that it begins with Nixon winning the presidency. And Duke University, we have a black student takeover, wanting more black faculty. Then we have Apollo 9 launching from Cape Kennedy, making 151 Earth orbits with, what is that, three astronauts on board. And in Los Angeles, Sirhan testifies in court having assassinated Robert Kennedy. I mean, we're talking tumultuous times, if you will. James Earl Ray, just 7 days, a week later, pleads guilty to the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King. Later, Dwight Eisenhower dies in Reed Army Medical Center. And Dr. Cooley implants the first temporary artificial heart in a patient in the States. Okay? In June, we've got the Black Panther group hijacking a plane to Cuba. A little later that month, we've got the Stonewall event, which is considered sort of like the beginning, the genesis of the gay movement, where homosexual rights movement, if you will. Then that July, Neil Armstrong's the first person to walk on the moon. Next month, Charles Manson murder Sharon Tate and four other people that are in her mansion in Los Angeles. And Woodstock takes place in August 15. One of those cultural events that almost define a generation, if you will. You look at all of those people that people our age know in terms of performers, like there are a lot of people probably at this generation wouldn't know Ravi Shankar, but most of us were intrigued by that Indian culture that was introduced through the Beatles, if you will. And then we've got September. The birth control pills are declared safe by the FDA. In December, the Rolling Stones present a concert, and they hire Hell's Angels as security. Now, if that's not an oddity, who would have thought about it? Only the Stones. And in December, Johnny Carson airs the ceremony when Tiny Tim marries Miss Vicky. I don't know if you remember that or not, but I do.
Yeah.
It was such an event. Okay. But back here in Lake City, Talon is expanding its plant. This is when it built the facility that's behind the Talon plant that's still being used as a warehouse. It's a large space. So at that time, it said it was bringing 35 to 40 jobs to Lake City. Lake City was getting a reasonable amount of industry at that point in time. Okay.
300 to 500.
Well, that was the total workforce. They already had the dye plant, in place, and it was operating. They were simply adding to the facility. And this is when Clemson came in with great plans for Lake City to rearrange Lake City. I love this thing. I mean, you probably can't see all the detail in it, and that's a shame, because they were even recommending that they move the railroad track. What they wanted was Ackline is going to be on the left of the railroad track as a single street. They're moving everything, except things like, you can tell on the bottom left, you can see the bank, and the Methodist church there. So across, you've got the post office. All of this is to the west of the railroad track. We don't have the sheet on the right, to the east of the railroad track. But notice they were going to put the school in the upper right-hand corner. So right across from where Town Hall is currently. And they were going to have a very futuristic kind of a mall there. I love their ambition. They were having an anchor of Sears and Pennies and Belts and all that in Lake City in 1969. Wow, were they dreaming? And I wish I knew who Clarence Glenn Hanna was/is. Does anyone know him? He was nominated for the Naval Academy. It was the start that year. I have no knowledge of whether he went or not.
I think he was the fourth person to go to Annapolis.
If he went.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to determine that he'd actually gone, but yes, he would have been the fourth Naval Academy nominee from Lake City.
Okay.
And here's the class of 1969.
Is that better?
Yep, that's much better. I think you can probably read most of the names. You can see who they were. There's some of them that are still around. There's certainly lots of them that I know, but most of them I don't know. Of course, I was gone by that time. So I know the names on almost all of them, even though I don't necessarily know them. But we got Betty Francis Floyd.
Yeah.
We do know Betty Francis. So, are there others that you see that are still in town?
Jim Davenport was the lead singer.
Jim Davenport.
Yeah, lead singer
Okay.
of the Sparrows.
Oh yeah. Okay. Okay. Next one. Here we go. Same great. I love looking at the ladies' hairdo, the styles, and notice how they change almost from year to year. If you took them isolated, you'd think they were different generations from just 10 years ago. You know, how different they are.
Okay. There's Sheila Moore. Sister Sheila.
Okay. Who else do we see that might still be? You will notice that this is probably this is the second class that we've integrated. Even though there are, I think, if I recall, there are three seniors in this class that are black.
Yeah. And it was about George.
But their choice.
It was about George, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mag Sagnick.
And I see, though I won't reveal, one of Kent's old girlfriends up there.
I wish he was.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure that was a requited love, but okay.
Nancy Wilson.
Yes,
Nancy Wilson was
went off to USC.
USC was the first
Was she the first female basketball? She was coach of the South Carolina women's basketball team at, I guess it must have been the 80s.
Yeah, I think it was
when she was the coach there.
Okay.
And this is the girls' basketball team. This is, there are 16 players here, which is a large group. I don't know when women started playing full court basketball. Does anyone know when that was? Somewhere in this era, it transitioned from half court to full court.
Yeah. Let them read it. Got it?
Okay. And here's the boys. There were 13 boys. Smaller group, but that was the high school basketball team.
Okay. Well, what?
This widening was part of Highway 52, coming from Cades to basically the city limits of Lake City. So this, as we know, we have a 4-lane highway between here and King Street.
Right there at Nanyang.
Is where it stopped.
Yeah.
And butted into Lake City. But that was completing that widening of the road all the way to Charleston.
And then in 70, they started widening it all the way to Charleston.
Mm-hmm. This is the status of the interstate highway in 1969. The dashed lines are where they are planned construction, not even beginning construction, just planned construction. If you recall, a couple of years prior, they were still trying to get the interstate, Highway 95, to come through Lake City, King Street, veer around through, Monk's Corner and back out to 95, where 95 is now, somewhere south of, somewhere to the west of Charleston. But they lost, and that is where the final determination would be.
Kind of glad, too. Kind of glad they didn't.
Yeah, I am, too. This was Jim Poston, the assistant postmaster. He seemed like Mr. Poston was a postman, and Poston was a postman forever.
Yeah.
From the time I was a wee little thing on, I remember him being in the post office.
He's Bill Poston and Jim Poston's father. And they lived behind the Methodist Church.
Then they moved to Martha Law right next to me. They moved to Martha Law in 72.
Yeah,
Did they?
right, yeah.
Okay. Note that he took the job when Mr. Cromer retired. And too often happens, Mr. Cromer was only retired for just a few months before he died.
Yeah.
And that happens way too often. That's why I tell everybody, don't retire. It's not a good idea. Okay. This is all about Wentworth. Wentworth has been having, from the last time you recall, there was a strike. The negotiations led to a strike. Now we've got a boycott. Apparently, the owners held out. They made their offer and said, take it or leave it. And the union said, we'll leave it. And so they started a boycott. And apparently, they were pretty smart about their boycott because they went to New York where Wentworth's customers were buying their cloth, and they made it such that their customers decided not to buy their product. So the pressure grew until finally Wentworth decided to go grant them the contract that they were asking for. Part of the deal, if you recall, was that the workers were afraid because Wentworth was opening a plant in Texas on the border, and they were afraid that all of their jobs were going to the Mexican border, if you will.
And this is the first union we had in Lake City. And the last one, too.
Yeah. You notice it did say in here that they actually did close the plant in Florence, but as part of the settlement, they reopened it. It was a small one, but nevertheless, it was part of the settlement. And here is the Lake City Plaza. I love this photo because if you really can see it well, and if you look in the background, you can see the houses that are back there. That's not first of all, that's I believe was that the Star?
The Star, number one.
The Star Warehouse is over there.
Yeah.
And you can see there are houses back over in the trees.
This is Floyd Motor Company.
Yep. At that time, that was a concrete building back there, on, what is that?
And this is the post office.
That's Dancy.
And some of it was sitting right here as part of the plaza.
It's a photo, but the thing that interests me is obviously this is also an artist conception, because if you'll notice the name on that building, it's Edwards. When they said they were bringing in, they were going to bring in, they did say they're going to have an Edwards variety. Which, that's a mighty big Edwards.
The Piggly Wiggly's here.
Yep, that's where Piggly Wiggly was.
Yeah, and them belts.
You can see the post office and the bank in the lower right corner.
Okay.
And this is the old W. Lee Flowers building on Fairview and Ackline that, if you go by there now, you'll see is imploding. The roof is falling in and needs to be torn down, but I'm sure it's too expensive for somebody to do. But W. Lee Flowers, if you recall, had started on Ackline. It had moved to where the Village Green is now, right across from the Jones Carter Gallery. And they went from there to this building. They built this in the 50s.
And then moved to Scranton.
And now they're moving, they're continuously growing, continuously expanding. And so here we are in 1969, making the move to Scranton so that they have a facility large enough to accommodate their business. And the business kept expanding and expanding.
Okay.
Fascinating. I wasn't living in Lake City, but I kept hearing about Lake City going to get a lake at this point. And the Clemson studies talk about getting a lake, and the council voted here to adopt a state act's provision for setting up a lake district. I probably repeat myself too often, but you do know that the street that's across Church Street from the current park is called Lake Street.
Yeah.
It's called Lake Street because in the 1910s they were selling lakefront property.
Right.
Now, where that lake went to, nobody knows. It just disappeared.
Now,
but we've been trying to get it back ever since.
Mr. Cockfield, Mr. R.L. Cockfield told me that they would go swimming right at the trestle. And there was about two small lakes there.
So the time that Mr. Cockfield would have been a student in school in Lake City, the school was located where the current mayor's office is, the city hall.
Yeah.
And so they could just walk right across the lawn, if you will, and swim in the lake.
Yeah.
So the lake apparently ran all the way from there to across to Church Street. But as I say, something happened. It just disappeared. And we've been trying to get it back ever since. And so here we have in the 1969, the city council is setting up, as part of the recreation department, a commission designed to get the lake back. I don't know what the status is, but they were going to get federal funds, about $2.1 million at the time. That's a lot of money.
We'll find out in a few minutes.
And I make the assumption, though maybe we'll find out later, I make the assumption they never got the federal funds. And so that's why it didn't go through. But they had Clemson in here giving us all kinds of plans about how to do this. Oh, we lost our newspaper. Lake City News had been around, it says 65 years, so since 1904.
Established in 1905.
The Sturgeon family and Miss Parker had created this and had been here consistently for that time. Lake City News stayed around for a while because it went through several ownerships before it finally disappeared, if you will.
Miss Parker would never, ever tell her age. You know, and it was something. And the only way you could find out how old she was is to go to the Lake City Cemetery.
Okay. Lake City has always had a nice history in terms of winning championships. And here we got winning the league crown, if you will, where the Panthers beat Manning 3-2 and took, it says, the title of the lower portion of 6AA conference.
And they lost out.
They lost out.
And they lost out.
Bummer. But this is when they began building the new high school on Matthews Road. This is not what the finished product is it? They added
They were adding more and more and more.
Yeah.
But the section, the gym was not added till way late.
Yeah.
And this was the high school at the beginning. You know, it's spread out now on Matthews Road.
Yeah. There are 2 additional segments built.
And it was if I'm right, it was the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders that were in here. And then the annex, which would have been the old high school, was the 9th grade.
The old J. Paul.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's the football team. Pretty hefty crowd, you know, and we had some really great football players at that time. And of course, for us, I graduated in '59. Zeke Ward was the coach at that time, and he's still there. And every town has its characters, and Zeke Ward was certainly one of them.
Yeah.
This was Coach Ivy. We talked about him last time. Coach Ivy went on to bigger and better things from Lake City, and he's now in the South Carolina Hall of Fame for coaches, football coaches.
And Zeke Ward made your women may not know what I'm talking about. The 4-4-3 defense. You had 4 linemen, 4 linebackers, and 3 safeties. And he made that famous while he was coaching in Lake City.
As a matter of fact, you know, it's the stadium, football stadium is named Ward Stadium after Zeke Ward.
Yeah. We still got the problem.
Yeah, we're still trying to clean up Lake City. Most people have to clean up crime. We have other things that we need to clean up. The sewer was overflowing. You'll see again and again and again. We have difficulty processing our waste in Lake City at this time. So it was only 10 years old and already too small to accommodate all of the waste in Lake City. So this is when they began building the plant out, as it said, Long Branch, which is outside to the west of town.
Yeah.
Now, I find this interesting because I had forgotten that Carolina Academy started on Thomas Street.
Well, actually, they started at the Presbyterian Church.
Did they?
Yeah. And then went to West Thomas Street.
Okay. I remember that building. It still stands. That was Charlie Green's house. It's now Skipper's nursery daycare.
Yeah.
Okay. As carnival workers come through Lake City, one of them just decides he's going to appropriate someone else's his house trailer. Off he goes, leaving the carnival workers stranded. But I assume they caught it. They at least went after him. So they knew who it was. And a new water well, that tower still exists. It's at the end of Thomas Street, right where it doves into Morris.
Right across from the stadium.
Yeah, from the football stadium. This is when Lake City gets hit by the Vietnamese War. I'm not sure he's our first casualty. But
one of the first.
One of the first. And this is in 1969. 1969 in Vietnam was not a good time to be there. It was certainly not for him.
Joined in March of 68, was killed in June of 69. Not long, was it?
Yeah, I think it was, not long. He would have been about 19. I never quite understood how Herbert Blankenship became Hub Terry.
Hub Terry was his radio name. Yeah.
If you're a writer, it's a nom de plume, or what is it whenever you're a radio announcer, when you get an anonymous another name, acquire another name. But anyway, he was the manager here in Lake City for quite a while, for 10 years, and then moved on to bigger and better things in Columbia. So he left us that year, 69. Now, I don't understand this. To get Cablevision in 1969?
Yeah. I remember a lady coming to the house, talking to Mom and Dad about joining Cablevision.
Was it like cable? Cable? Like today's cable?
Yeah, it was a cable that came into the house. Yeah.
Well.
And we thought we were something.
I bet.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you grew up watching, what was it? Channel 3 out of Charlotte. And you got the voices and some vague figures and a lot of fuzz. Yeah. That would have been pretty marvelous.
And Jamie and he came home one time, and I remember we were fighting on top of the house about turning the antenna. I wanted to watch Charleston. He wanted to watch Columbia. And guess who fell off the house?
Always. Yeah. I have done my best to get rid of Kent.
Always.
More things I've done to this poor man over his lifetime than I've got time to relate.
Yeah. Treat me awful.
And now we're up to 1970. Notice that the council and the mayor stay the same. No election at this point.
I think it was a 2-year term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Where are you going?
There you go.
And here we go. Look at number 5, War. Do you remember that one? I mean, how could you forget it? You know, it was a raucous anti-war theme song. I listened to it again today, you know, and war, what is it good for? Nothing, you know, and it gets worse from there. So that was in that era. But we still had the kind of feel-good movies like Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head and Ain't No Mountain High Enough and, you know, I'll Be There, Let It Be, even Band of Gold. Just so many great songs from the era. And the movies. Love Story, I missed that one. Little on the sugary side, I hear. You know, you have a different reaction to it?
No, I'm driving to Columbia to see it.
Dragging Harry. And then you've got Airport. That one of those disaster things. Chicago Airport snowed in. What was her name? Hayes, the great American actress. She was in her 80s or 90s at this.
Helen Hayes. Yeah.
She got an Academy Award for her role as a supporting actress in this movie. Then MASH, you know, that was on TV, you know, the phenomenon of the era, just a great time. Patton about World War II. Aristocats was a Walt Disney animated movie. It had been in production for quite a while, but they delayed it because they were promoting Jungle Book, which came out just a couple of years before, and then Aristocats. Woodstock is, what did they say, 236-minute extract of the Woodstock Festival in New York. It omitted the beginning and the ending acts for some reason, but apparently it's a real documentary of that event. And that's one that people who attend it, and I have friends who attended it, still talk about it with a freshness of memory. It's one of those events that they just can't and won't forget. And then you got things like Little Big Man, which is kind of another subtle anti-military kind of a thing. Little Big Man, complicated plot, so I won't relate.
Hoffman.
Yeah. Then Ryan's Daughter. Ryan's Daughter was about the Irish Rebellion. This takes place in Ireland in 1913, and it's one of those tragic kind of movies. Supposedly, it's an adaptation of Madame Bovary, which is the life story of a very frustrated housewife. And then you've got Tora, 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 which is a World War II movie, and Catch-22, which is after the book. The book was such a phenomenon. I never saw the movie, but I remember the book very clearly. Very powerful book. Anti-war, though not specific to the era. And the cars. What do we have in the cars? We got the Porsche 911. Oh, I wish I'd had one of those. Being a Francophile, I always wanted one of those little odd little Citroens, those little squat cars that had the hydraulic adjustments, and you'd ride down roads and it felt like you're riding on a cloud. You'd hit a bump and you wouldn't notice. You just constantly like a cloud. But look at Honda bringing in their first car, the N600, if you will. Boxy little thing. You know, you wonder how they survived long enough to actually be successful as a car maker. Okay. And Pete Sparrow, re-elected mayor of Scranton by a 19-vote margin, which is good enough. The other council members were John Singletary, Charles Helford, Laverne Smiley, and Harry Osborne.
Laverne Smiley was a barber.
Oh, Mr. Smiley.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Lord knows. It's hard to believe Mr. Smiley was serving on the council. He was 82 years old, which meant that he was born in 1888.
No. 88 votes.
Oh, not 80.
No, not
82
age.
years. Oh,
Not age-wise.
my mistake.
No.
Okay. Brown and Horner. This is where 7 is now. Brown and Horner was a hardware store. And
Where 7's is today.
yep, it was built back in the same era as all of the Truluck buildings, because I believe it was built by Jack Truluck's brother, if I'm correct. And here it comes. It burns in 1970, in January of that year. I still remember, it was one of those marvelous old hardware stores where you go in and wooden cases and everything is in wooden cabinets and things like that. And you almost have to be an archaeologist to find the parts you want. You got to go unearth stuff. It was always fun to go in there. The Glamour Shop, the ladies' dress shop that was right next to it, is where the alleyway is now. And of course, Lynch Barbershop. It was not called Lynch's Barbershop at that time. In 1970, I think it would have still been Hotel Barbershop.
No, it was Lynch's.
Was it
Barbershop.
Lynch's
It was
already?
still Lynch's.
Okay.
And then the glamour shop is the alleyway
Yep.
that goes from the parking lot in the back to Main Street.
And here we have the girls' high school team from 1970. The girl in the bottom, I don't know who that is. I can't figure it out. The one in the middle on the bottom. Who? I don't see her listed, but you'll notice that our very own patron, number 3, is Darla Moore.
Yeah, Darla Moore, yeah.
She was good.
Okay. Jeannie Johnson, right here.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Diane Weaver. A girl named Kay Brown.
Uh-huh.
Lynn Keith.
Lynn Keith.
Keith. Deborah Godwin.
Godwin.
Yeah.
Janice Tippins and Lynn Calcutt. Leslie Floyd.
Nancy Weatherford.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Tamara Henry, Mr. Tom Henry's daughter.
Okay. And here's the boys. Boys team.
Sam McWoody, Chroma called his basketball team.
But the junior varsity with the water lips in football and basketball.
The one that Greg Tommy was in. Herbie King, Herbie Jeffers, number 13.
2 years.
Interesting list of
Yeah.
names that I know, ones I don't. Okay,
Didn't know.
that's it.
The electric paddle.
Mr. Edgar Whitehead. I started school, first grade. He was the principal of the elementary school. He was a terror. You did not want to go into Mr. Whitehead's office.
No.
It was more terrorist than actual terror. He scared you to death.
That wire leading out the wall. God.
And I've told you this before. He had an electric paddle,
Yeah.
which was nothing more than a wooden paddle with an extension cord stuck in one end. But he absolutely convinced us that that thing worked.
And you weren't late for class. If you were in the hall, man, you were scared to death.
He was a vacuum cleaner. He swept you up and took you into his office and left you in the outside until you were shivering. And if you wet your pants, he'd let you go back to class. But he was a terror.
You know, kids are not ashamed today, but we were ashamed to walk in class late.
Oh.
You know.
He was always a lawyer. I think he had been trained as a lawyer, but he practiced. His office was over where Joe's barbershop is now.
Yeah.
And here we have the junior senior. And the theme is the Okefenokee Swamp.
And guess who that is? That's Miss Sharon Moa Askins.
Is it really?
That's her.
Look at that. It surely is.
There's Charlene.
All right.
Charlene Tomlinson.
I don't know. Do they decorate for proms today like they did then?
And that's Sharon Askins Moa right there too.
Yeah.
With a mini skirt. And this was a frog they made.
A what?
I think it was a giant frog. The scene was the Okefenokee Swamp.
They talk about the fact in here that they had dry ice to create the fog over the swamp, so you couldn't see exactly what you were doing. Gray moss, greenery. Yeah, I can't imagine how much effort the teachers put into organizing these things back then.
Yeah.
The teachers didn't do it.
No,
You don't think?
no, hell, I was there. We stole we stole 2 outhouses. Woody stole one of those 5.
Well, I guess.
A pig around the cemetery.
Don't be telling all now.
Jimmy Brown bought it 2 oak trees.
Yeah.
Walked all day to haul out of the gym, and they couldn't get rid of it.
You know, the next class is 1971. So
And once again, Highway 52 getting more widening and 4 lanes. So now we're all the way to King Street. Last year they did Cades to Lake City. Now it's all the way to King Street, 4 lanes.
okay.
Minnie Pearl. I would not have known that was Minnie Pearl because she didn't have her hat on.
Yeah.
I would not recognize her otherwise. But her actual name, as it said, was Ophelia Coley. She had, you remember that some time back, we talked about Dr. Whitehead, Dr. J.D. Whitehead, having dated Minnie Pearl. It was a quickie thing. She was with friends, I think, in King Street, and she met him, and At any rate, here she is,
That's it.
18
She's
years
living.
later, calling him out of the blue to reminisce and to get into his pocket. She obviously is trying to collect, to raise funds for her charity. She has
The cancer.
the American Cancer Society. But it says they reminisce for quite a while. So here you go. It's always nice when friends from so long ago just suddenly reappear in your life. I said friends.
Okay.
Okay. And here we go, we're into the desegregation era, where the district has submitted its plan for desegregation, and it's submitted to the federal officials, what they call pairing and grouping to achieve racial parity. Apparently this is not true integration at this point. This is sort of like a trial run, if you will. I look at the line that says that the plans call for eliminating dual bus routes. Never really thought about how expensive it must have been to maintain a segregated school system. The separate schools, the separate teachers, the separate bus system. Must have been very expensive. Okay. The exercise, where is Robinson Memorial Auditorium? Huh?
Pentecostal.
The
You think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Boston Church.
At the Pentecostal Church. Okay. 101 seniors. Lake City, that was a high number. My class in '59 was 72. It had grown and grown, but grown slowly. It's now at 101.
One in Elmore's a doctor. Julia Gary
Is Dr.
a doctor.
Gary,
Yeah.
pharmacist.
Yes.
It's interesting that I heard this comment from Julia Mims, that year there were 5 national scholarship awards made in this class. That they were all, what's the actual title? National Merit Award.
Yeah.
Which was 5% of the class. Incredible. And this is the class. And as you can see, there is some integration taking place. It's certainly not half. It's not the match and pair kind of thing, because out of this group, you see 4, 5, 4.
There's 10 on each line.
6. There's 6 black students. So out of 30.
Yeah. Make sure everybody. Okay.
Okay. And here we go. And we have 5 out of 30 here.
Greg Tom and Bill Whitlock.
So at this point, it looks like Lake City has integrated to the extent of about 12% of the students are black. Yep, Bill Whitlock.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are quite a few people in this class that you know.
That's great. Oh, come back in.
One more.
Come back in. Yeah.
There we go.
Great Tommy. Billy Bolston.
Okay.
Okay.
Here we go. We have Mary Elizabeth Graham, South Carolina Spelling Bee champion. 8th grade. Goes to, I guess she went to Washington and went through the 7th round. How many of us would have gotten heinously right?
And she recently died.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And 6 state championships from Florence County and 5 from Lake City. So talking about a good school system, we had one.
Dixie Youth League tourney. Lake City beat Del May of Florence 5-3. And we go to Myrtle Beach for the playoffs. Glenn Ruthin got a 2-run homer to win it.
Yeah.
Jody Welch, winning pitcher. And this is Mr. Waltman, who came with the A.B. Dick plant.
And the Earns came to town.
69.
In 69.
69, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you came before this guy.
He came in 70. Yeah.
Yep. So he had quite a history and didn't look like much of it was A.B. Dick. The Oster Manufacturing in Tennessee, U.S. Merchant Academy. Does anyone know what happened to him? Did he stay? Did he move on?
He moved on. Remember A.B. Dick closed?
Right.
And he moved on.
Okay, but still with A.B. Dick.
He stayed until they closed. But he had another job.
When
Okay.
did the Sedniks come?
Indiana.
Indiana. I can't remember really, but
Okay.
I have to ask Slade.
Kathy, when did the Sedniks come to town?
A couple years before that.
Okay.
What'd she say?
The Sedniks came before
The
65.
Sedniks. When did they come?
Sedniks?
Yeah.
3 or 4 years before us.
Yeah, that's what she said. Okay?
They came when our whole first opened.
Beautification means taking out the parking meters.
Been parking meters for a long time.
And I think that's probably right.
Yeah. I think it was the last time.
If you remember, we spent several decades talking about Lake City putting in parking meters.
Yeah.
Decades. Every other year, somebody bring it up. They either wanted to put them in, they wanted to take them out, they wanted to put them in, they wanted to take them out. We got rid of them.
Beautification, though.
What can you say? We were and still are the victim of a very old infrastructure. Anybody that has ever gone up and down Thomas Street knows that those sewers were put in probably by the Roman legions. They have been there forever, and they run right under all of the houses, and so you can't dig them up to replace or repair them. And so they're crumbling, and they have created problems, particularly on the other side of the railroad track, for decades, because they can't absorb all that runoff And Harry, that ought to be a job you ought to go for.
Yeah. I was teaching at what we call Carver High School, run back there, 1971. And when it rained, it puddled. And it was bad news.
The powerful Panthers, our football team. So I actually counted the wins in here, but it seemed like it was almost a 5-6 or something like that season for them. But
There's
so
Sam.
many people there. There
Sam
is
Mack.
Sam Mack Probst. Lord have mercy.
Don't think that.
Goes Harvey Jumper.
Yeah, it's her.
A lot of people in this group
Yeah.
that
Shay
I
Riley.
knew about.
Shay Riley.
Is that the Rusty Smith down there? The Rusty Smith? Wow. I think Henry Johnson's in there. Still here.
Okay.
There's Sam Mack.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that happens to me every time I look at this is we go through one of these histories is noticing how many family names have, if you will, winked out. They're no longer here. They're no longer, the name is gone. So many names that were here for such a long time, and now the family is completely gone from our area. Of course, there's always influx, there are always people coming in. We actually have grown in total numbers since then, and the mix of families has changed, but it's always sad to a certain extent when you see families that you knew well that no longer have representation in the area.
Okay.
Okay. And we've been working on getting this public housing for a decade now. And so we're getting money for 160 units in 1970. And notice Tom Thurmond is still around and kicking and driving money to South Carolina.
And remember, we were the first in the state to
Yep.
have housing.
Get public housing.
Yeah.
This is so sad.
Yeah.
This is the pool that everybody in our generation spent our summers in. I mean, it was just such a wonderful place to play and spend time and meet friends. And in the evening, they had a jukebox up there, and you dance and drink Coke and whatever. It was just a wonderful experience. And they decided to close it and fill it in.
And you can see part of it now.
Can you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So sad. Well, this whole thing about fighting taxes obviously goes back quite a ways. We're not going to increase we're not going to approve an 18 mil increase in local taxes.
Yep.
And I never quite understood how millage rate translates into real dollars, but I do think that 18 mils is not a lot.
Yeah.
But notice the vote, almost 2-1. Again, oh, more than 2-1 against.
That's wonderful.
We would have had wonderful recreational facilities with that 18 mils. Okay. And many of you remember Reverend Cutno leading a tour of the Holy Land. He liked to travel. So he had been several other places before and was ready to go back.
Going to the Holy Land. He graduated from Yale.
Yep. He was.
And Yale did yeah.
I was not here when he was the minister, though I met him several times, and I was always impressed by him. And the demos, as in Democrats, win. I really didn't know that I think this may be the first time that we actually talk about in city elections by the party. Up until this point, it's been pretty much
Democrat.
No labels. 1970, we divide into Democrats and Republicans. And the Democrats, as I said, Charles Tomlinson, Wesley Floyd, and Roger Nettles. Republicans were Bernard Jones, Bill Sebnick, and Leon Whitehead.
That's a pretty good number, though.
Yep.
11.
Lake City was very clearly Democratic at this time.
Christmas parade.
Now the second paragraph talks about taking W.E. Flowers' old warehouse, once again, and turning it into the Village Green. They didn't call it the Village Green at that point. It was a parking lot. It was just an empty space behind the stores on Main Street.
Yeah.
But it was good to know that Christmas parades were still a big deal, even in 1970.
Yeah.
You know.
The band went to Johnsonville in 1966, and we were behind the horses. You know what I mean?
Yes, we know. Oh. And our desegregation plan got turned down as being inadequate. So they say we have to turn around and we have to rework it. It was clear that they were going to do it, no matter what it involved, because of all the funding that was involved, that the school probably would not have been able to stay in operation without federal funding. And so they would do what the courts told them to do. Really?
We got
high time.
yeah. $1 million to patch it up.
I don't. Roads rule the state.
That's over. That's Palmetto State. Is y'all know where the Graham School is?
The Graham. The time went on the Graham Road.
You go down Williamsburg Avenue all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
You're going south, and you run into Graham Road.
Graham, yeah.
Yeah. Palmetto Estates was that subdivision that had a circular.
Oh, Palm Court.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good.
And the mayor and Charles Road.
We're always waiting on federal funds.
Yeah.
Can't do anything unless the government gives us the money to do it.
That's true.
Okay. And that's it.
Yeah.
Poor Jack.
Thank y'all
We
for
remember
coming.
him.
Yeah.